This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
And we back here on Fourth and Frames. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get it popping tonight as we go over our way too early top 10, 12 tight end rankings for the 2025 season. I'm Rhett Manuel, here with my boy Drew Scott, here with Kyle Ziegler, and here with Aiden Weingardner. As like we said, we are going over tight ends here for the 2025 redraft season. And as always, do not forget to like and subscribe and review to catch anytime a new podcast or short drops from us here at Fantasy and Frames. And also do not forget that you can search for all the podcasts here at Fantasy and Frames by name, wherever it is for your podcast that you go to. And for us, for this show, make sure to subscribe to the Fourth and Frames podcast and lock in at fantasyandframes.com for the latest weekly IDP and Dynasty rankings, articles, takes, news and notes, whatever it is you need. Guys, it's been a minute since we've all been together. Been a couple weeks for me. We took a week off last week. 2 weeks ago, I need a little rest as we get moving to this new career. But let's go ahead. Let's go around the frames. Drew, it feels like it's probably been about a solid month since we shared a screen. How the heck are you, dude?
I'm just happy to see you back in that top left corner, man. This show is already running so much more smooth now that you're handling the hosting duties again. You put me in the hot seat whenever you had to miss a few weeks ago, and I would not have been able to fill in. I wouldn't have been able to put that "let's get it popping" in as graciously as you did. So it's good to have you back. It's good to be back. It's good to be back with you guys, man. Even if we are talking about tight ends, I'm still happy to be here.
That you say, even though we're here talking about tight ends, what you mean is that you're here for the best show of the season. Kyle, the odds are looking a little bit low. You're looking happy to be here tonight, buddy. What's up?
Man, I'm excited. NBA drafts tonight. My Orlando Magic, the 25th pick. We got Desmond Bane in free agency. I'm stoked about that. We got a real big three here in Orlando, so I'm super excited about that. I'm ready to talk some tight ends with y'all too, man. So let's get it popping.
The very rare NBA drop here on Fourth and Frames.
I had to try
it. Might be the first one.
Nah, it is the first one, I'm pretty sure. And Aiden, what are you doing, man? How are you?
I'm great. I had to also miss a couple weeks ago for some unforeseen circumstances, but of course I'm back. No matter what position it is, I love talking running back and wide receiver. Tight end, not as much, but as you guys mentioned, it's just great to all share a screen again, no matter what we're talking about. I'm ready to have some fun tonight.
And I think a lot of the disdain towards the tight end position, Drew, I just don't think that these guys have been fortunate enough to share a screen with either Andrew Cooper or Howard Bender whenever we're talking about tight ends, because those guys
will get you fired up to talk tight end for sure.
Oh, yeah. They get fired up about the tight end position. And that's what we're trying to do tonight, guys, is we get into our top 12 way too early tight end rankings for the 2025 redraft season. For the most part, I look at this list and I see that we're pretty much all fishing the same hole in terms of the players for the most part. I think our tight end one is pretty cut and dry, pretty consensus. Our tight end two is pretty cut, dry consensus. But at tight end 3 on, oh boy, does it get hairy for us. So let's go ahead and let's just get straight into it. Like I said, we all agree Brock Bowers is the man at tight end 1. Trey McBride is the man at tight end 2. Aiden, it starts to get hairy at tight end 3. But let's just go ahead and let's just ask you the question about those top two tight ends. Are you comfortable paying the current price tag in drafts for Brock Bowers as a tight end 1 this year? Or would you rather Trey McBride with a chance to be the tight end 1 and being a better draft value going forward?
So I was talking about this with a couple of you guys pre-show, but if Brock Bowers is being pushed, like I know right now his ADP is early to mid-second round, but in some circles I've talked in, he's being pushed into the late first round. And if he's being pushed in the late first round, early second round, I'm definitely out. Not that I don't love the talent of Brock Bowers. I really, really do. But for my personal beliefs and build, I just feel like if I take a tight end really early in the top 2 or 3 rounds, let alone late round 1 like Bowers would likely be going, I feel like it ruins my team build. That's just me personally. The same can be said for Trey McBride. in the second round. So I'll take some of these guys we'll touch on later. I think a couple of the names after the clear top 2 are really good values. So that's just my personal belief that I don't really take tight end very early because I feel like it kind of ruins my team build and I come out of a draft like regretting it immediately.
Kyle, I'm going to go off the sheet a little bit right now, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question that's not on the sheet, but I feel like is very relevant for the Brock Bowers conversation. Is there any concern that with Pete Carroll as the head coach there and his history of how he tends to run his offenses, is there a possibility that we're too high on Brock Bowers with a new offensive scheme and everything heading into 2025?
Yeah, I think so. Because actually, I looked into it a little bit. I went to Fantasy Data, and I wanted to look at where Bowers finished of all players, actually. And I did. I looked into it. He finished 32nd of all players, right? Since we're talking about Bowers, he was 32nd of all. I looked at McBride, too. He was 39. Because I was curious of how Aiden was going to answer this. With Bowers finishing 32nd, you can get guys later that finished better than 32nd. Terry McLaurin stood out, James Cook, Josh Jacobs. They all finished higher than Bowers and McBride. So for me, I'd rather just – how I feel about it is punting the tight end position. That's how I look at it.
Yep.
So I would rather just take a top 6-7 running back there, top 10 wide receiver, however you want to do it, and hope for the best later on in the draft with a tight end. Because as good as Bowers is, he's not a top 10 wide receiver good.
Drew, I'm just going to go to the flip side of that. He mentions punting the tight end position. How do you feel about the strategy that some people might have used in the past, especially with a guy like Travis Kelce, where he offered such a positional advantage that it was almost worth it to get those bonus points out of the position versus others? Do you believe in that or no?
Never believed in that to the point of wanting to take a tight end in the first round. I've never been the guy that was taking Kelce in the first round. I just can't. Whenever you're talking about onesie positions, I cannot make myself take a onesie position in the first round whenever I know on a weekly basis I'm going to have to start at least 2 running backs, at least 2, sometimes 3 receivers, depending on your league. And then you've got 2-3 flex spots as well, depending on how your league is built out. I do believe that it's nice to have the positional advantage. It's nice to be able to plug Travis Kelce back then, or in this case, Brock Bowers, into your tight end spot and know that you're good. You're set. You don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year, assuming no injuries take place. But at the end of the day, it's the whenever you're doing fantasy football leagues, it's the points that you score versus the points the team you're playing scores, and so I just I've kind of always stayed away from that. I've been a guy that typically avoids both tight end and quarterback in your traditional start one quarterback, start one tight end leagues, and so I get the rationale behind wanting to have the positional advantage, but it's never been enticing enough for me to follow through on it in the first round. Second round, especially like mid to late second round, I'll consider it at tight end. Still not a quarterback, but I will think about taking a tight end if I think they provide a clear advantage if we're talking about like mid to late second round.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where the crux comes in, because I don't think you can get a Brock Bowers in the mid to late second round. But if you could, let's say hypothetically you have a guy that tight end you draft in the mid to late second round, early third round, and they give you that sort of 90 catch, 1,000-yard, 8 touchdown sort of production. All of a sudden at that point, you get a bonus wide receiver too that you weren't expecting. So, yeah, it is a value-based sort of play in that scenario, and it is one that's hard to hit. But, I mean, it is one where if you hit it, it is kind of hard to ignore. But I do agree at the same time that it's not something that's worth chasing early in a draft. So, and
just for some additional context, according to Fantasy Pros Best Balls ADP, which I mean they factor in RT Sports Underdog drafters, so it's not just Underdog, but looking at some other different best ball sites, it looks like Bowers is going 17 overall, so he's right in the middle of the second round according to that. 18 overall on Underdog according to this database on Fantasy Pros, and then Trey McBride is at 23 overall, so the second to last pick in the second round. I would rather just wait until, like, if I'm picking if I'm picking 1 overall or 2 overall this year, I don't mind taking Trey McBride at that 2-3 turn. But I'm probably not taking Bowers where he's going right now, just because I have those two guys in a tier together. And so if I'm expecting, even though I have Bowers as my tight end 1, if I'm expecting those two guys to have similar production and I can get one guy, a half a round later, I would just rather wait.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing. I just looked at fantasy data, and it showed that Brock Bowers scored 262 points. Okay, you can get Terry McLaurin, who did 267, and you can get him later on in the draft. So the point I was trying to make is you spend that early pick on Brock Bowers, who's tight end 1. He scored 262 points when you can get Terry McLaurin, who scored 267. What is he, 5th, 6th round? So I would rather go that route and then hopefully get a tight end that you actually maybe hit a jackpot on, like Kyle Pitts or something.
Okay.
Oh.
No.
You just had to use him as the example.
Why?
Our first Kyle Pitts name drop of the season, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Kyle.
So, Drew, speaking of players like Kyle Pitts, do you think there are any tight ends outside of these top 2 guys that you think have wide receiver 1 upside? Tight end 1 upside, excuse me.
Yeah. So how about the tight end 1 overall in points per game last year? What about that guy? I think George Kittle could finish as a tight end 1 overall once again this year as well. He was a tight end 1 last year. I already mentioned I have Bowers and McBride in my tier 1 at tight end, but my second tier at tight end is George Kittle all by himself. If anyone listened to the top 12 solo running back show that I did, then you know that I'm in on Christian McCaffrey this year, but I'm not really sure what to expect with the rest of the playmakers in this offense. I know Juwan Jennings had a really solid year, but how much can you really trust a guy that took 4 years to eclipse 500 receiving yards? Ricky Pearsall, really strong couple weeks to end the season, but extremely small sample. And granted, he deserves some grace. Whenever you get shot, I think that you deserve a little bit of a buffer there to be able to recover from that. But a small sample of us seeing him in that offense is a focal part of it. And then Brandon Ayuk, he's dealing with an injury. We don't even know what we're going to get from him, when he's going to play, how many games he's going to play. The one constant in the passing offense for the 49ers has been George Kittle. And while the chances of him continuing to ascend going into his age 32 season might be slim, he also hasn't shown any signs of slowing down either. There were 31 tight ends with at least 50 targets last year. Okay, 31 tight ends. Among those 31 players, George Kittle was first in yards per route run. He was 9th in targets per route run. He was first in yards per target. He was 2nd in yards after the catch per reception. He was 7th in yards after contact per reception. And he had 8 red zone targets, which was also 6th among tight ends. Like, this guy was still just an absolute beast across the board. And Father Time, I know it's undefeated, but I'm going to need to see some type of slowing down from Kittle before I try to project that or I start to doubt him. So he's still firmly Bowers, McBride, they have a slight edge because of where the trajectory that they're at in their career with how young they are, the fact that they are ascending. I do give them a slight edge over Kittle, which is why I have Kittle in a tier by himself below those two guys. But my strategy at tight end this year is basically I'm probably not going to get Bowers, but if he falls far enough, I'm happy to take Bowers. But I'm looking at Bowers, McBride, or Kittle. If I miss out on one of those 3 guys, I'm probably going to be the last one in my league to draft a tight end. But I still think Kittle deserves to be in that discussion. If you want to have him in your tier 1 with McBride and Bowers, I'm not really going to fight you that much. I do think that there's a little bit of separation there, but George Kittle, he's right now, as far as best ball ADP on Underdog, the last that I saw, he was like 47th overall. And so, that's over 20 picks later than you can get Trey McBride, who I think that we could end up seeing some similar production from Kittle. I understand why McBride is going higher, because of the stuff that I already mentioned. But, yeah, I think George Kittle's a stud, man, and I think he's going to have another really productive season.
And, yeah, that's fair. But, I think you wanted to have a little bit of a debate with me because my tight end 3 is a little bit different than yours. And Stephanie Scott said, man, she loves fantasy all of a sudden once again. Because you know why? Drew?
Wifey, man. Shout out to Wifey. I love that woman. Why though?
Because it's the tight end show. That's why.
Yeah, that's right.
Brett Slater.
Yeah. Shout out, wifey. I love you, baby. Yeah. So I mean, coming into the show, going in blind before looking at the rankings, I really just assumed we were going to have a clear-cut top three. I knew that it was going to be Bowers and McBride, right? But then I just also assumed that we would all have Kittle as tight end 3 until I got into the show sheet and I saw how the rankings laid out. And Rhett, you've got Laporta at tight end 3, and then you've got Kittle at 4. So you've just really thrown a wrench in my whole plans here of having a clear-cut top 3 discussion that we didn't get to have. So I got to know, is this something like, is this the excitement that you have for Laporta? After that beautiful discussion that I just had about Kittle, do you still have concerns about him? What is it that has you having so confident having Laporta as your tight end 3?
Dude, it's simple for me. I think that a lot of people looked at the very, very high usage of Sam Laporta in year 1 and just expected that was going to be the norm going forward. And I think that's kind of what people are also doing with Brock Bowers right now. With Brock Bowers had 157 targets in his first season. Guys, I'm here to tell you, knowing this position, if a tight end has 100 targets, it's a rarity. It's not the rule. It's the exception. Mm-hmm. So when we saw Sam Laporta in year 1 have 120 targets, it ended as the tight end 1. And he comes down to earth, so to say, last year. And he still has 83 targets. This is still a high usage tight end we're talking about. George Kittle, your tight end 3, only had 94 targets last season. So whenever we're talking about the tight end position, it's not necessarily a volume position. It's an efficiency position. And while Sam Laporta had the volume in year 1 of 120 targets and 86 receptions, he only averaged 10.3 receptions in his rookie season, and he was bolstered by 10 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Last year, in year 2, where he only has 83 targets, but he has 60 receptions, his yards per reception go up. And he maintained that touchdown efficiency. He actually had an 11.7 touchdown rate last year, which was 4th among the position. We made a lot of talk about George Kittle and all the efficiency things that he put up there. Sam Laporta was right there fishing in the same hole on a lot of those things. He was 5th in red zone targets. He had 19 red zone targets. He had 9 deep targets. That was 3rd at the position. He had a 17.9% air yard share. That was 7th at the position. He had 146 slot snaps, which was down from year 1, and that was 27th at the position. But it just goes to show you that last year with Jameson Williams, they just kind of they finally found what they were looking for with him. I think what we're looking at with Sam Laporta this year is somewhere between that way high 120 target year 1 and where he was last year in that year 2. It's very possible that we're going to see Sam Laporta have a very similar usage to that of a George Kittle. And while George Kittle might be used more in that position and have more upfield usage, because that's kind of how San Francisco uses him, who is really the second option in that Detroit passing game? Are we really saying it's Jameson Williams? Probably not. Is Isaac T-Slaw really going to come in and cut into the Sam Laporta role? No, not really. So the golden rule that we all like to live by is with us tight end sickos is this. You need to be the number 2 passing target in your offense to have true fantasy value. And I don't see a situation where Sam Laporta isn't that guy this season for Detroit.
So a couple things there. The first thing, I think that Brock Bowers being tight end 1 last year, or tight end 2 going into tight end 1 this year, I think that his usage is a little bit more sticky because he only had 5 touchdowns last year and was still as productive as he was, whereas Laporta's rookie season he had 10 touchdowns, so literally double the touchdowns. And so you're less touchdown dependent with Brock Bowers whenever you're comparing the 2 rookie seasons, so it's not necessarily apples to apples.
But 160 targets? It's not happening again. I don't care.
Maybe not 160, but he's still gonna, he's still gonna be up there. I mean, he's still the clear guy in that offense. Like, where
like 110.
Are they gonna flood Jacoby Myers with targets all of a sudden?
I mean,
he's probably still going to be around his 80, 90 that he's normally at. I don't expect him to be anything crazy. And they'll probably run the ball more considering they just invested a top pick in Ashton Genty. But, whenever you talked about who's going to cut into the targets with Detroit, one name that you left out was one of, if not the best pass catching running back in all of football, and Jahmyr Gibbs, who also is going to factor into that as well. And look, I've got Laporta at tight end 6. I'm the lowest among us, which is why I'm kind of pushing back a little bit. I actually had him even lower than that a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think I was showing him enough grace for the injury that he dealt with to start last year. And he was a lot better across the second half of last season. But even with saying that, he still finished as a tight end 9 in points per game last year. So at tight end 6, I'm still expecting him to at least be better than he was last year. But I'm just not with consensus on him being a top 4 tight end. Like Rhett, you're in with consensus. I mean, this is where most people have him at tight end 4. I'm the outlier here, so I don't want to make it sound like you're the crazy one by any means. But I talked about my concerns with some passing touchdown regression already whenever we talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown a few weeks ago. And I feel like that applies even more so to Sam Laporta. He's got some legit target competition between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, whenever you put Laporta in that as well, it's not going to shock me if any of those guys is the second option in this offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think it's a shoe-in that's going to be Sam Laporta. And among the 31 tight ends with at least 50 targets last year, he was 15th in target share at 15.3%. And even though he was down at 13th in tight ends even though he was down at 13th in targets among tight ends last year, he was 3rd among tight ends in end zone targets. And so, again, he's just a very touchdown-dependent guy. And I've already talked about how like Jared Goff had an extremely high touchdown rate last year compared to what his career average has been. And so if I'm going to preach that I'm expecting Jared Goff's touchdown rate to come back down to earth this year, it really only makes sense for me to be lower than consensus on the guy that's the most touchdown-dependent option in this offense. So I still like Sam Laporta, the player. I think that he's a great fit for this offense. And I think he's a great NFL player. I think he's a good fantasy asset too. Given his ADP, I think that I'm going to be out on him this year. I feel like he's too touchdown dependent to be drafted where he's going personally.
Kyle, you have any feedback on that? We ain't heard from you in a little minute.
No, I was enjoying the banter back and forth. I'm a little bit more on Red's side. I mean, he might be touchdown.
You guys are, according to the rankings. I mean, you guys are both closer to that than I am for sure.
I mean, you say he's touchdown dependent, but who does Jared Goff look to in the end zone? He looks to Sam Laporta. So he can catch the football. He can catch it from 20 yards out. He's proven it. He's had 10 touchdowns last season, right, Rhett? I think he could do it again. I mean. That's his big target down in the red zone. I don't see that really changing. So if he is touchdown dependent, I think he'll actually do it though. You know what I mean? So double-digit touchdown, I think, is right about where he'll probably be in that range, 8 to 10 touchdowns a season.
Yeah, it's a fascinating debate because I mean the tight end position, like we said, I feel like there are 4 guys that you can shoe in, and we've kind of discussed them all already. It's Laporta, it's Bowers, it's McBride, it's Kittle. Like those are your big 4.
And then you punt.
If you're in on Laporta, he's going like a full 20 picks later than George Kittle is. So I already talked about how much of a value I think that George Kittle is. If you're in on Laporta, if he's your tight end 4 or Red's case tight end 3, the fact that he's going 20 picks even after George Kittle, for you guys, that would be a value as well. He's going to be somebody that I'm not going to be drafted much of, but if you believe in him as your tight end 4 or tight end 3, I think he's going 65 overall. That's a price tag worth paying if you believe in him this year.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we are because I think you see these clear top 4. Then we go to that tight end 5 where both Aiden and I have T.J. Hawkinson at tight end 5, and Drew, you just don't believe in the man. You hate the man. You have him at tight end 9. So
come on.
Look, so we're gonna kick it old school tonight. Shout back to season 1. And Albert, it's good to see you. Season 1 of Fantasy and Frames. Aiden and Drew, you're in the grinder. Let's have an impromptu Master debation session.
Oh, I heard
Hey.
about this.
Aiden, tell me why you're so high on TJ Hawkinson this year. And then Drew, you get to play devil's advocate. And Kyle, you're going to tell me who has the better argument. Let's go.
All right.
You want me to go first?
Yes, Aiden, it is up
Absolutely.
to you. Let's go.
So I've said for the last couple of years that TJ Hawkinson has been underrated and undervalued, especially going into last year. Everyone knew that he wasn't going to be back to like Thanksgiving time, right around there, just because of the torn ACL. But when he came back, sure, he had a couple spike weeks here and there, but I don't think he was full TJ Hawkinson for the quarterback. So I think he's once again being undervalued, especially where Drew has him here. I'm sure he'll get to that at tight end 9. But going back to the quarterback position, I'm not nearly as high on JJ McCarthy as honestly most people are. But I will say that if JJ McCarthy is struggling, oh, I know.
I love JJ McCarthy. Anyway,
sorry to let you down. Okay. Anyway, if JJ McCarthy is struggling year one, which I kind of think I'm expecting, I know it sounds weird to say, then he will be funneling middle of the field targets to JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy will be funneling middle of the field targets to TJ Hawkinson, especially in the end zone, because McCarthy is, for all intents and purposes, a rookie. Justin Jefferson, all-world receiver. We know that. Jordan Addison, let's be honest, first 2 years in the league, he's kind of touchdown dependent. He doesn't get a ton of targets per game, especially when Justin Jefferson's healthy. So I think TJ Hawkinson, last couple of years, has been undervalued. I think this year he's really undervalued. So, and I like a lot of not dump offs, but a lot of the easy, inline slot targets, if that makes sense, that he could get from JJ McCarthy if he does struggle or not.
Drew, the floor is yours.
So, I mean, a lot of the reason that I'm lower than consensus on Hawkinson is the same reason that I'm lower than consensus on Laporta. And I'll just say this too. It's become very evident to me going through this process. So one of the reasons I've loved the fact that we've gone through quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end rankings is to be able to see kind of how I stand against consensus. And I am very much so against consensus on tight end more so than I am any other position. And I understand that. But I just really struggle putting a tight end in my top 5 that I know is going to have to compete with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison for targets all year. I know that he was coming back from injury last year, but even if you just look at whenever he started playing 60+% of snaps from week 12 through the end of the year, he was still only the tight end 15 in fantasy points per game. And I've got him higher than that at tight end 9. I expect him to bounce back from injury to an extent, but I just struggle to see the ceiling case for Hawkinson here. He was tight end 15 in targets per route run, tight end 13 in yards per route run, tight end 29 in yards after the catch per reception. Now, my third tier at tight end is huge. Even at tight end 9, he's still in my tier 3 for the position, which stretches from tight end 4 to tight end 10, which is just another reflection of why I think it's important to just wait on the position if you don't get one of those top 3 guys. So given that I still have him in the tier with a lot of the guys in front of him, I'm not going to fight you too much if you want to take him at his ADP. There's just other directions that I would prefer to go that I'm sure we're going to get into shortly. But, Rhett, you talked about how we want to look for tight ends that have a clear path to being top 2 in their offense and targets. And I don't think anybody would argue that Justin Jefferson is the clear guy there. And then it is kind of a toss-up between Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, who's going to be the guy. The tricky part is there's a new quarterback coming in, right? So you can't just go off of last year's target trends and say, oh, well, because Sam Darnold trended this way, that's how JJ McCarthy is going to work, because we don't really know that. And so that's kind of the what if. And there's also a lot of projection with JJ McCarthy as well that everybody assumes that he's going to step in and play just as well, if not better, as Sam Darnold did last year. And I have faith in Kevin O'Connell at the play caller and the head coach. I think that he will set JJ McCarthy up for success. I was never the biggest JJ McCarthy guy personally. Now, do I think that he can step in and be just as good as Sam Darnold was last year? If you're only looking at like the last couple games of the year and then the playoff game Minnesota had, I think he can be better than that. But I think that Minnesota fans and fantasy managers would be thrilled if JJ McCarthy played as well as Sam Darnold did for the majority of the regular season. And I don't know if you can just project that and copy paste what Darnold did to start the year to to what you can expect with JJ McCarthy. And so I think it's tricky with a new quarterback that is inexperienced and a tight end that's coming off of an injury that doesn't have necessarily the clearest path to be top 2 in targets. I personally expect Jefferson and Addison to be 1 and 2, but again, I think it's close between Addison and Hawkinson. But I just think there's enough question marks that I had to leave him outside of my top 5 personally, and almost outside of my top 10. He did come in at tight end 9, but again, I understand I am lower than consensus of this guy.
Kyle, they've both been through the grinder.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty close argument. Aiden, I wish you would have went the route where Hawkinson didn't score a single touchdown last year and he averages 5, so he should regress to the mean there. So he should have about 5 more touchdowns next season.
The injury thing. It was the injury thing again.
Yeah.
He played 10 games last year and he only had 3 red zone targets.
Yeah. Man, I have to shoot over to I don't know who won that argument. I really don't. It was good on both sides, honestly. Rhett, do you have it? I'll defer to you.
Of course you will. Go ahead. As the host, I get to be the bad guy, and I get to be called biased no matter what, because everyone knows at the end of the day, me and Drew have 3 seasons of history, and everybody hates Aiden. So the debate goes to Drew.
That's rude.
I didn't want to be the bad guys.
He took it to another level.
So sometimes you got to play the heel and you just got to embrace it. And speaking of playing the heel, I mean, Drew, we're going to start talking about guys that you're higher on consensus than a couple of guys here in your top 5. Drew, this is the hot take probably of the entire show for me, because not only did you not have Sam Laporta at tight end 4, you put Evan Ingram at tight end 4.
You said that with a question mark. You've never
Evan Ingram, maybe?
No, it's 100% Evan Ingram. It is that Evan Ingram. The injury prone, one really solid season, one elite season in his career, Evan Ingram as tight end 4. I love you, brother. I love you. I know you're about to bring some good data to this situation. You're going to have to blow my socks up and convince me about this situation.
I hope your socks are duct taped. I'm going to give friend of the show, D-Bro, over at Fantasy Pros, some credit for this one. A couple weeks ago, I tweeted out that trying to rank tight end 4 through tight end 14 feels impossible this year. And D-Bro actually commented under that and said, McBride, Kittle, Ingram, or who cares, and stream the position. And whenever I saw that, it raised my eyebrows a little bit too, because I hadn't really dove into Evan Ingram too much yet at that point, just somewhat because of my bias against Bo Nix, because I've never been a Bo Nix guy necessarily. And so I had dismissed Evan Ingram a little bit, even though I like Evan Ingram, the player. But I tried to put that bias to the side. Bo Nix had a productive rookie year. Obviously, I'm very capable of being wrong about a prospect, and Bo Nix could continue to prove me wrong. But I had been struggling to figure out who I wanted to rank at tight end 4 for weeks. And so once D-Bro said that, I said, okay, I'm going to take a look. And then I started to see the vision. The first thing to love is the lack of target competition, right? It's basically Cortland Sutton, and that's it. And whenever I'm looking for tight ends outside of the usual studs that I want to target in drafts, I'm looking for guys that have a solid path to be at least a second target in the passing offense, like Rhett, you mentioned earlier.
As you should, yeah.
So that box is checked, right? Like, I mean, unless you think that Pat Bryant is going to come from Illinois into the NFL and take the league by storm, it's hard to see how Evan Ingram wouldn't be a top 2 option in this offense. I'm also a firm believer that targets are earned, not given. Like, if you are a true elite player or a good player at your position, you're going to get targeted at a high rate because you're getting open and because you're being productive. And last year, Evan Ingram was 3rd among tight ends in target share, and he was 4th among tight ends in targets per route run. So both metrics, he was top 5 across tight ends that ran at least 50 or that had at least 50 targets last year. And given the fact that the Broncos made Evan Ingram the 10th highest paid tight end for the 2025 season, whenever they signed him this offseason, you have to think that there's a role for him there. So I know that he has been injured. That's a part of the game. it's a part of the risk that you take with drafting Evan Ingram. But Evan Ingram, the talent, I still believe in him personally, and he's still earning targets at an elite level, like not just an okay level or a good level, top 5 in target share and targets per route run. So give me Evan Ingram as the tight end 4 in drafts this year. And the best part is he's not coming off the board until tight end 8. So like we've been talking about already, you can just wait a little while, grab some more running backs and receivers, and then grab somebody that I have as a top 5 tight end coming off the board as tight end 8. So I've already mentioned the struggles once you get outside those top 3 tight ends. I just think Evan Ingram has the best mix of lack of target competition and talent within himself to make some noise this year.
Are you not going to bring up this highly coveted Joker role too? I mean,
no, that's one thing that I purposely did not say because that is some stupid shit, and I don't care about that.
He'll throw passes like Taysom.
Yeah, I do not care about the Taysom Hill role, and that has no factor in my evaluation whatsoever.
So yeah, on the flip side, we have me who has Evan Ingram down at tight end 10, and this comes from a very simple place for me. I watched Sean Payton football for the better part of, I don't know, how long was he in New Orleans? 12, 13, 14, 15 years? Like, there's a 15-year track record of Sean Payton and tight end usage. And outside of Jimmy Graham, who was far and away the unquestioned number 1 target in that offense, I think we can all agree that Evan Ingram, heading into his age 31 season, is nowhere near the athlete prime Jimmy Graham was, first off. When that elite guy is not in the cards, and Evan Ingram is somewhere between what Sean Payton had last year and Jimmy Graham, we can all wholeheartedly agree with that. But even when he had a pretty good tight end, let's say you have your Jeremy Shockey, Jared Cook type years. These were, for on good years, 50 to 60 catch tight ends. And Sean Payton, when he doesn't have one guy, what does he have? He has a lot of guys that he spreads the ball to. That's just the nature of the Sean Payton offense. You saw it last year. You saw Cortland Sutton get the ball. You saw Devon DeLay get the ball. You saw Marvin Mims get the ball. When he doesn't have one, he has 7. That's just who he is as a head coach. Spreads it out. So if you're going to tell me for this exact moment in time that Evan Ingram, who in his career has exactly 1 elite season, if you're going to spend this and tell me all of a sudden this is the year with Evan Ingram with a 2nd-year quarterback and a coach that has an 18-year track record of spreading the ball around, Drew, I'm sorry. I love you. I don't see it.
So first of all, Evan Ingram has had 3 top 5 finishes in his career. So this is not like some outlier thing what's only happened once. He's been a top 5 tight end 3 different times in his career. Right. Yeah. But I mean, how many tight ends are we drafting this year that have had 3 top 5 finishes in their career? Like, so I mean, it's not like he's completely unproven. And then whenever you talk about last year's Denver Broncos, bro, it was Adam Troutman and Lucas Kroll at tight end last year. Like, would you have used the tight end position last year if you were a Denver Broncos offensive coordinator? Okay. Because I wouldn't have. That would have been malpractice to be like, no, let's feed Adam Troutman a 20% target share. It makes no sense.
That's fine.
Outside of Jimmy Graham, is there a more talented tight end that Sean Payton has had?
I just said that. I agree.
So if that's the case, I just don't understand bringing up last year's tight end room and that being a reason to fade Evan Ingram this year.
I'm talking about the usage in this offense. If you don't have a Jimmy Graham, if you don't have a Michael Thomas, Sean Payton spreads the ball around. He doesn't have a Michael Thomas. He doesn't have a Jimmy Graham.
If Sean Payton doesn't like Evan Ingram, why did he sign him to the largest tight end deal in this offseason?
Because the tight end room was cheeks.
But they could have signed anybody to like a $4 million deal if they just wanted to add some depth to the tight end room. Like, they didn't have to go make him the highest paid tight end this offseason if they weren't going to use him.
Calling him the highest paid tight end this offseason is like signing a one-legged man in a karate contest because the tight end position
I
wasn't that
really
good a
wish-
free agent this offseason.
I really wish I had one leg because I'd love to have like $11-12 million this offseason.
I'll have one leg for that.
I kind of wish that I had one leg too. I don't know. I think he's really undervalued, and he's going to be a guy I'm definitely going to be targeting a lot.
That's fine. I love it for you, buddy. I love it for you.
I love it.
So one other guy that you're especially high
Let's
on,
keep
and
it
I'm
rolling.
kind of on board right here, is David Njoku at tight end 5. And I kind of see the vision here because if the quarterback position goes like we think it does, like it will in Cleveland, which we can acknowledge that the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation this year is the Denver Broncos tight end room of last season. Full disclosure there. But what do we see in Joker? Is it a Flacco situation? What do you got going there?
Yeah, that's a complete full disclaimer that I have to give to start off is that I'm fully expecting Joe Flacco to be the quarterback for the Browns to start the year. If for some ungodly reason we find out that the Browns are going to roll out Kenny Pickett, I'm going to be moving Njoku down. But whenever it comes to having Njoku as the tight end 5, I'm really just asking him to keep doing the same thing that he did last year, which was finish as the tight end 5 in points per game. And then he was also the tight end 7 in points per game the year before that. So I don't – he's tight end 10 in best ball ADP right now. And I don't get it personally. Unless you're expecting Kenny Pickett to be the starter, I don't understand having him down at tight end 10. The 4 games that Njoku, Cedric Tillman, and Jerry Jeudy were all healthy last year, Njoku was second among those guys in targets, and Cedric Tillman was actually first, and he's one of my favorite late round draft targets this year. But I mean, that's a whole other discussion for another day. But and I know it's a small sample, but if we look at the 5 games that Flacco started at the end of the 2023 season for the Browns, it was week 12 through week 17, I believe is what it was. Mm-hmm. David Njoku was the tight end 1 overall for those 5.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Wow.
Now, look, I'm not here to make the case that David Njoku is going to be the tight end 1 overall for this year. That's not what this is. I'm just saying that if Flacco is the starter for the Browns this year, he is criminally underrated and easily my favorite target in drafts at the tight end position. And I think if you are projecting Joe Flacco to be the starter for the Browns this year, he should be a top 5 tight end.
Well, speaking of people who have things to say about David Njoku being the top 5 tight end, Kyle, you're the lowest among us in having Njoku at tight end 9. Do you expect Joe Flacco doesn't end up being the quarterback? Or what's your rationale behind that?
Yeah, I think we need to pump the brakes just a little bit. Yes, Flacco will win the job. But what's going to happen when the Browns are 1-4, 2-5, and they got Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel sitting there and they want to go younger? They want to see what they got. They're not going to stick with Flacco the entire season. Yeah, he's going to ball out for the first 5-6 games because he did. He was tight end 2 there with them when he did play in those 5 starts. But they're going to transition to one of those young guys. And now how do you feel about drafting Njoku at tight end 5?
Well, the thing I'll say is you don't have to draft him at tight end 5. You can draft him at tight end 10. And what I'm doing in that scenario is shout out to Andrew Cooper, Coop, friend of the show. Whenever it comes to guys like Njoku and guys that I'm drafting late, like Njoku at tight end 10, I try to utilize his yin-yang strategy where I'm going to take a guy that is a little bit more safe and take a guy that has a little bit more upside. So, maybe I draft somebody like Kyle Jones-Smith that we'll talk about a little bit later. No, stop doing this to me.
Dude, I'm just Drew.
Or maybe I'll draft like Mark Andrews or something, and then I'll take David Njoku a little bit later. Like with where Njoku's going in leagues, in redraft leagues, he's probably not going to be the only tight end in our roster. But if it comes to that point to where they do pivot and go to Dylan Gabriel for some reason, then, I would look to pivot at that point. I think that's a fair point. I think that's a fair concern. But I'm just going off of what I think will happen. And with Joe Flacco starting the year, if I can take a guy that I think is a top 5 tight end and I can draft him as the tight end 10 and I can start my year off really hot at the position, I'm going to take that all day. Even if I'm going to reach for Njoku. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to wait to draft him at tight end 10. I'm absolutely drafting him tight end 7, 8 in my draft to make sure that I get him. But I'm not. If we get word that Joe Flacco is going to be the starter, I'm not too concerned about what if the Browns make a quarterback change down the year. I'll navigate that during the season as the year goes on. But whenever we're in draft season, just going off of what we know, I think that Njoku is going to start the year extremely hot if we get Joe Flacco as a starter, and I want that to start the year. So but it is a fair concern though.
No, that's a fair point too, what you said, because if you do draft him and you got him at that tight end 7, 8, 9 range, I don't mind that. And if the Browns do take off, then you got a tight end there that can stick around for a while, because as long as they're winning games or at least in the hunt, they'll keep Flacco going. And on the flip side of it, if they do start to lose games and Njoku is balling out, well, now you can at least maybe flip them before they do make that move. So it's not a bad. It's a fair point.
Also,
it would be tough to do in some leagues with, like, if you're in leagues with sharp people that are paying attention, it would be tough to do. But to your point, Kyle, that's exactly what I would try to do. If it was clear that the Browns were considering a change at quarterback, I would absolutely try to package Njoku with somebody, try to level up before it happens. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that aspect as well. Sorry, Aiden, what were you about to say?
No, it's just, is it just me, or does anyone else think last year was kind of a one-off for Jerry Jeudy and he's not going to repeat that again?
I'm very concerned with Judy's ADP for sure.
Me too.
I think some of it is being gassed up for what he did with Jameis Winston. I think I talked about this a little bit. I think Cedric Tillman is the best value, even over Njoku, in this passing offense. And I will have 0 Jerry Jeudy shares with where he's going right now. So no, I agree. I'm also concerned with that.
Yep.
So what I'm concerned with right now is the fact that in the year of our Lord 2025, Drew, am I hearing this correctly, in that you finally quit Kyle Pitts? That's not a no.
Maybe.
That's not a yes.
Quit is a strong term.
He likes his ADP.
I am not fully healed, and I will 100%
fine.
draft Kyle Pitts at his ADP this year and ride the train again, in hopes that Michael Penix will be able to lift him back up to what we saw his rookie year with Matt Ryan. No, I am not. He's not in my top 12, but
He's ready to be hurt again.
Done.
I'm ready to be hurt again.
Let's just see. I've got Kyle Pitts at tight end 15, and his best ball ADP right now is tight end 18.
24.
I am still above consensus for Kyle Pitts. I am ready to get hurt again, absolutely, but at least it will not sting as much this year because you don't have to pay up for him. But no, I'm not giving up on Kyle Pitts yet. Absolutely.
Drew is, in so many words, just dropped the world famous words that we see in every abusive relationship in the history of ever. I can fix him.
maybe Michael Penix can,
If it doesn't happen with Penix this year, though, then it's over. Like, we're done.
Well, no, then I'll just blame Michael Penix and say that he just wasn't that good and they need a different quarterback.
We're done until next year.
2030, here we go.
Then they replace Michael Penix with Arch Manning, and then we're back, baby.
We're back,
Kyle
baby.
Pitts season, you're 7.
All right, so now we're going to get outside of these top 5 tight ends, and there are a lot of similar names that we have at tight end 6 through 10. And we're gonna start off with you having Mark Andrews, the highest among us at tight end 6. Tell us why you're excited about it.
So I know the Ravens are a run-heavy offense with Lamar and obviously Derrick Henry. And by all accounts, including myself, yes, Mark Andrews did struggle. He started off very slow the first half of last year. But you look up at the end of the year, and I was even surprised at this number when I researched it. He had 11 touchdowns on the year. I feel like it kind of snuck up on everybody. So he obviously, had a really good end to the year. And I know everyone loves Isaiah Likely, but it's not like he gets some like high-end full snap share or something. He's more of a like move around slot wide receiver type / tight end than an inline guy anyway. So they do run a lot of 12 personnel. They like to use both Andrews and Likely. I like Zay Flowers, but I don't know if he's like a true number one fantasy wide receiver, like 2/3. I feel like he would better be suited as a wide receiver 2. I'm very much in on a big Mark Andrews bounce back. And again, you may or may not know, he's on a contract year this year, which I always love for any position, but especially tight end. Show the best ability. Sure, maybe he moved on after this year, but for this year at least, he had 11 touchdowns at the whole year, and believe it or not, he had 11 end zone targets, which tied for the team lead with Rashad Bateman. So Lamar clearly still trusts him down in that area, and they clearly still have that connection. So Mark Andrews bounce back season, I'm very much in on it.
Kyle, on the other side, you've got him at tight end 10. Talk us through it.
Yeah, like you said, Aiden, they are a run-first team, and you've already made that point. And I understand how productive Mark Andrews has been, but a lot of that, to me, was touchdowns. Like you said, he had 11. I expect a regression there. He averages about 7 touchdowns a season, so I expect that number to come down to right about his average. And the lack of passing by Lamar Jackson, I mean, it's not terribly low, but he is quarterback 16 in attempts, and perhaps we start to see a decline in Andrews' game in terms of target share. Everyone shits on Rashad Bateman, right? Well,
nope, not me.
Well, that's true. Never has.
Because Mark Andrews' target share was right along there with Rashad Bateman at 14%, which is down for Mark Andrews. So perhaps I'm starting to see the arrow come down for Andrews.
Yeah, I've got Andrews one spot lower than Aiden, so I'm still high on him. But I do see the concern as well. But my concern would be more so just the Ravens spreading the ball around more than it would be like Isaiah likely taking on a bigger role. Like I think Likely is what he is as long as Andrews is there. But I could see a world where the Ravens just spread the ball around more naturally in the offense, and the touchdown rate isn't there for Andrews. But whenever you look at that offense, if it's not Andrews in the red zone, who's it really going to be? So it's like it's hard to depend on that type of touchdown rate, but at the same time, it's like if it does decline, where is it going? So it's one of those catch-22 things. So I'm
it's
not
going on the ground. It's going either Lamar Jackson on a quarterback keeper, or it's going to Big Henry. So
that very well could be the case. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm not the highest among us on Andrews. I do still like Andrews for this year. I think he's a good value in drafts, but I get the concern. But the slow start last year, him dealing with he got to a car wreck and some other shit at the start of the year, right? Like started off the year slow due to some injuries, and so I think you have to factor that into as well. Andrews is probably the most interesting tight end for me this year because he's one of the names that we all know, but it's really hard to know what his outlook is going to look like this year. But at least it's the same thing that I struggle with Rashad Bateman. It's like, hey, I love that he's attached to an elite quarterback, but the Ravens are also, a bottom 3 team in terms of pass attempts across the year on a year-to-year basis. They're one of the teams that throw the ball the least every single year. And so it's like that pie just is smaller and smaller. So I'm kind of playing the fence on this one. I like Andrews this year, but I see both sides though.
Yeah, I mean, with Mark Andrews, you just have a guy that I'm on the fence. Like, yeah, there was a tight end dependency last year, but there's also the idea, and I'm going to get into this very shortly, is that if there's a position where I said tight end dependency, I mean touchdown dependency, where touchdown dependency matters, like it's kind of the tight end position. Like, you don't want to. We say it all the time. Touchdowns aren't sticky, but probably more at this position than any other in fantasy football, or where touchdowns really are predictive of a person's fantasy value.
Yeah, and if you play DFS, if you're not rostering one of the top tight ends for the week, you're just trying to pick out the tight end you think is most likely to score touchdowns. But now, Rhett, you're the highest on Jonnu Smith at tight end 6. Are you expecting another year of success for Jonnu in this Miami offense, considering how high you have him?
Dude, I love Jonnu. First off, let's just all things clear. Jonnu is my Kyle Pitts. Like, full disclosure, Like,
Okay.
that's my guy. I can't
He's
quit
been
him.
in now.
I love the athleticism.
Fair
But
enough.
here's my question for you guys. You asked me, do we think Jonnu has another season like that in him? And I'm going to come to you with this question. Tell me what Miami has added in the passing game to throw me off the Jonnu Smith scent. Are we going with Nick something, the hyphen guy who I always confuse those last two names because I don't really know what order it goes in because he doesn't really matter? Is that what's taking us off of Jonnu Smith right now?
7 straight weeks of touchdowns.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding.
We had a bit about this last year, by the way.
I'm
did.
kidding.
Yeah.
One catch,
Yeah.
one touchdown.
We had a running bit for that for a while.
One catch,
last year.
one touchdown.
But no, there's part of me who looks at Jonnu Smith and he had 111 targets last year. Like, okay, that comes down. Like, full disclosure, that comes down. I agree. Like, I'm not stupid enough to think that Jonnu Smith is coming out and getting 110, 115, 120 targets again this year. But if you're telling me that the mega athlete tight end in an offense that values mega athletes isn't ready to have another big year, you're out of your mind. Tua does not run the ball at all. He's a 0 in the run game. Mm-hmm. So we have the check down situation. Your check down guys are Devon Achane and Jonnu Smith.
Yep.
With how much Devon Achane played the slot last year, Jonnu Smith still outproduced them in the passing game. So my argument at the end of the day is this. If you look at the 2024 fantasy rankings of tight ends, in PPR, Jonnu Smith was tight end 4. Tight end 5 was Travis Kelce in PPR at 197.4 fantasy points per game. Jonnu Smith outproduced him by 27 fantasy points. So all I'm saying is that the floor for a top 5 tight end ceiling, if the touchdowns are there, and that's an important part because Trey McBride, despite his monster target production last year and 111 receptions, ended up as tight end 5 in standard scoring because of the fact that he wasn't getting into the end zone and it was non-PPR. So in a tight end situation, touchdowns are going to matter. And if you're going to tell me that Jonnu Smith is not capable of another 5 or 6 touchdown season in this offense with his usage, with the fact that not much has changed in the way they're going to operate, other than the fact that they might use bigger backs this year, considering they signed Alex Madison and drafted Ollie Gordon. I mean, it feels like another safe play for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I've got him one spot lower than his ADP. I believe he's the let's see, he is tight end 9. I've got him at tight end 10 only because I have Njoku ahead of him, who is behind him in ADP. But he's in that territory. He's going 106 overall. He's the ninth tight end off the board. I don't mind taking a shot at him at all. I'm expecting a bounce back from Tyreek this year, but if you are not expecting a bounce back from Tyreek this year, and if you think that last year is what we should expect moving forward with Tyreek, I think it's even easier to paint the upside case for Jonnu. So I don't mind it at all. I think that he's a good value in drafts as well. This is another one that isn't in the show sheet, but I think it's a guy that if we're talking about tight ends, we have to talk about it. And to be honest, full disclosure, I thought I put it in the show sheet, but apparently I didn't look it back. So, Kyle, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick.
You guys both did tonight.
Yeah. So we're just making you fly with no pants on tonight.
I like it. Let's get uncomfortable.
But
I like it.
Travis Kelce, you're the highest among us on Kelce. And if we're talking about tight ends, we have to talk about Kelce, right? So you've got him at tight end 5. Aiden has him all the way down to tight end 10. So spoiler, Aiden, we're going to call on you here just a second as well. And then I've got him at tight end 8 and Rhett has him at tight end 9. So Kyle, I'm closest to you at tight end 8. I can kind of see the vision, but it just, talk a little bit about Travis Kelce, if you don't mind, just for our viewers, that there's going to be a lot of people in draft season this year that are going to see Travis Kelce sitting on the board and they're going to know the name. They're going to know who Taylor Swift's boyfriend is, and they're going to want to draft him. And so, what's the reason for optimism for Travis Kelce this year?
Well, Rhett said it earlier, right? Have a tight end that's at least second in targets on the team.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But I mean, Rashee Rice is probably the number one receiver, but Travis Kelce is going to be at least the number two in targets on that team. So Rhett said it earlier there. His rapport with Mahomes, he's second to none. It's third and Kelce on third and short. He's still going to continue to look for him. I think that's going to continue. I'll happily take Travis Kelce at tight end 5. I mean, from 2016, he finished tight end 1 multiple times. Tight end 2 finished. Tight end 3. Tight end 5. I know Rhett's always scared of age because every time I come on here, he talks about Rhett
hate old people. Yeah,
I hate old people. As the old man in the room, I hate old people.
That's why he loves me so much.
And I get where he's coming from, but Travis Kelce is still Travis Kelce. It's probably going to be his last year. I'm sure he wants to go out with a bang, and he's never been lower than tight end 5, tight end 6 in the last, 10, 12 years. So why are we so low on Travis Kelce? I just don't understand that. If you can get Travis Kelce as his ADP is, I love it at that spot because he could walk out tight end 1 and not any of us would be surprised.
Oh, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
So
you just pump your brakes.
So Aiden,
pump your brakes, Peanut.
Why are we so low on Travis Kelce? Is it are those Bills banners behind you? Are they?
No.
Are they clouding your vision, or what's going on with the Travis Kelce?
Dalton Kincaid, tight end 1.
No, I'm actually down on Kincaid compared. But anyway, you talk about a touchdown-dependent tight end. I think Travis Kelce is going to be definition of touchdown-dependent in his old and slow age in this season, 2025. And I know Rat loves me.
And I hate old people. Okay.
Well, he showed a lot of signs of regression last year compared to what he usually is in terms of just speed and everything else. And personally, I don't want any part of this Kansas City passing attack this year. There's talent. I just think it's too spread out. You got Rashee Rice. You got Xavier Worthy. You got Travis Kelce. What if they try to revitalize the running game with a couple of explosive guys in Elijah Mitchell, Bashard Smith, and a ground and pound guy in Isaiah Pacheco? So I just think there's too many factors. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Anyway, yeah. But that there's a reason I didn't include him. But you have too many weapons here, but I don't think I want any of these weapons in, even if they do come in at value or not. I just don't know. I think it's going to be really hard to figure out who's going to score the touchdowns on a weekly basis, who's going to get the targets on a weekly basis, stuff like that.
I think you're missing something. Travis Kelce still finished tight end 5.
I know. I'm just saying it looks to be more spread out with a fully healthy Rashee Rice.
And he only scored 3 touchdowns. He only scored 3 touchdowns.
He had 3 touchdowns last year?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
That's good.
Wow. Interesting. I could definitely see that number going up.
Yeah.
So
that's why I wanted to bring him up because in 2025 we can't really have a tight end episode without talking about Travis Kelce at least a little bit. But I don't know. You alluded to the fact that we might be talking about him a little bit more. So go ahead.
Yeah. So we're gonna go around the frames to close things out tonight. And let's go ahead and let's go around the frames first off, and let's talk about the tight end that is inside of your top 5. Let's go top to bottom, starting with Colin and finishing with me. That you think has the most risk to fall outside of the top 12 by season's end.
And before we do that, Kyle, just shout out JT Brew. You held it down for Fantasy and Frames tonight, man. The IDP show with the IDP Hunter, as well as the solo show, which I know is never easy, doing the Dynasty 365 solo show. Great job tonight, man. He said, if I miss out on the top 5 or 6 guys, I'm waiting tight end and grabbing a guy like Pat Freiermuth, Tucker Kraft, Hunter Henry, or Cade Otton. I'm not much of a Cade Otton guy, but I love the Muth and Kraft call outs for sure. And Kraft is somebody that we had in our top 12 for redraft pretty much across the board almost, I think. So
and
that's a guy that we like quite a bit. But so I wanted to get that out there. But Kyle, go ahead, man.
So it feels like that, Drew, you might have sold me a little bit here for my top 5 tight end that could fall outside the top 12. I'm going to go Sam Laporta here.
Oh, no.
Come on. Don't listen to Drew. What does he know?
Let's go.
Yeah, he sold me. I love what he said. You know, there's a lot of weapons there. You know, you got Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams with arrows pointing up. Goff could very easily just toss the ball around to everybody. We didn't even mention David Montgomery. He's still a focal point of that offense. And you add in the fact that last year he was tight end 8, Sam Laporta. All he's got to do is dip a little bit, and he's in that tight end 12 range with these tight ends. So there could be if there's a slight dip, that I would not be surprised if he hit 12 and 13 or higher.
Aiden?
So I talked about this guy earlier. While I do have TJ Hockenson at tight end 5, I got to admit that's not an extremely confident ranking. You guys talk about You guys talk about top target earners and their offenses. If you really think about it, TJ Hockenson is like the 4th option in this offense with a real kind of incomplete evaluation mystery at QB. Obviously, all-world receiver Justin Jefferson, number 1. And then I'd say Addison's the 2nd option. And then the 3rd option is really the running game. And they invested in now 2 capable running backs with re-signing Aaron Jones to a pretty big 2-year deal. And then having the confidence to trade, who I really like is a handcuff plus, if that makes sense, for Jordan Mason. So I think TJ Hockenson is kind of buried here in terms of the target tree. I do think he's undervalued, but for this question specifically, I'm unfortunately going to go with Hockenson.
Drew?
I love those 2 answers. That's great.
Of course you do.
I'm going to stick with David Njoku here. I know it's a hot take to have him in the top 5. This is the caveat, though. If for some reason Cleveland does Cleveland things and they're like, Kenny Pickett is our guy, he's going to start the year at quarterback. I've seen enough Kenny Pickett to know that this guy is not the answer, and that I have no faith he can support any fantasy relevant options as a quarterback. But for God knows why, he's projected to be either the quarterback 1 or quarterback 2. I would literally rather go grab somebody off of a UFL roster and have them play instead of Kenny Pickett. But for whatever reason, this guy still has a chance. And so if something comes out and the Cleveland Browns are like, hey, we're a pretty shit organization, we're going to keep doing shitty things, and we think that Kenny Pickett is our quarterback of the future, at that point, there's no way Njoku's reaching his ceiling, and I'm going to have to move him down. And so I think that he's, just because of the unknown at the quarterback position, I think he's the one most likely to fall outside of the top 5. But that's the only if Joe Flacco is quarterback, I'm not fucking backing down. Okay, so I just want that out there.
One caveat.
And for me, the answer is also Hockenson. Yeah, it's the low-hanging fruit because he's a tight end 5. But Aiden made the point when making his Hockenson argument about possibly funding a lot of targets to TJ Hockenson because he could, quote unquote, be a potentially bad quarterback in his rookie season. And that's a completely wrong answer, because here's why. If you have anybody who's not a plus quarterback, the move is that they're always going to that first read. And the first read in this offense is Justin Jefferson. So this is where we are. And I just feel like TJ Hockenson is almost a mortal lock to drop outside of his top 5 for me, because of the fact that if JJ McCarthy does struggle, then we are going to see him do a little more locking in to that Justin Jefferson, to that Jordan Addison sort of situation, dumping off to Aaron Jones. That leaves Hockenson as that 4th option, like you mentioned earlier, Aiden, and that's not a recipe for success at tight end.
I didn't say McCarthy would be bad. I just said he's a mystery and incomplete evaluation right now.
In practically his rookie season. Anyway.
This is absolutely his rookie season. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Do we have anybody that's like a big JJ McCarthy guy on the panel?
On the panel? Anybody?
I know
JJ guy?
I know D-Bro loves.
Listen, me and D-Bro talked about this
Thor, there's a lot of really smart people that really like JJ McCarthy. That's why I raised the question, because
I'm ready
to be wrong.
I watched in preparation up for last year's draft, and just watching the way JJ McCarthy, number 1, moves in the pocket, number 2, had the ability to make some really nice tight window throws, while also being able to do that on the run from time to time. You've got an athletic guy with a good arm who can place the ball accurately into tight windows, that's hard for me to look past and be like, no, that guy can't play. Like, I get it's college football, but you're still throwing to college targets in college football, and you're
just
making
didn't have a lot of
pro-level
volume.
throws. Yeah. If the volume is what you're worried about, then fine. But you know what? If I see a guy who's on tape making those types of throws with less volume, I'm kind of into that too. So, but
He does
that's
have
just me.
the tools are there. I'm with you on that. I'm a little concerned of what he was asked to do in college versus what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But
Yeah.
Okay, so Rhett, I'm going to start with you on this one. We're gonna hit the Uno reverse. Tight end outside of the top 5 that could finish as the tight end 1 overall. Give it to me.
All right.
Give me the spice. Tell me why Kyle Pitts is tight end 1 overall.
Oh no, Kyle convinced me a while ago. If there's a guy outside of my top 5 that you can convince me could be tight end 1 by season's end, Travis Kelce on a farewell tour with a little bit of touch with some positive touchdown regression. I mean, that's a great call. Like, I don't need to make a full argument on it. That's just smart. I like that.
Yeah, we know who he is. All right, Kyle, what about you?
Drew, I actually made a bowl of hot peppers because I was going to come in here with something really spicy, but then I decided to drink a glass of milk. I was going to go with Dalton Kincaid, and I was going to make the argument about receivers in Buffalo. And the receivers in Buffalo, I mean, who are they, right? We know who they are. They're all a bunch of number 3s. But anyway, I don't see why Dalton Kincaid can't do better than what he's doing. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah,
I ended up playing that. Was that?
I do agree with that. I do think that Dalton Kincaid, if he is who he should have been based on his draft capital, he should be better this year. I do agree with that.
Yeah. So I drank my milk, and I'm going with Mark Andrews here because he's done it once. He's done it before, 2021. The only way it's going to happen, though, is he has to double his yardage. Because when he did do it in 2021, he had 1361 in yards. He had 673 this past season. So that would be a challenge. And then, of course, he'd have to keep up with the touchdowns, which he can do. I mean, I know I made the argument before about running the football a lot, but he could do it. He could have double-digit touchdowns. He would have to improve those yardage by double. But if anyone could do it, it's Mark Andrews.
All right, Aiden, how about you?
Well, Kyle just stole mine. I thought I was going to come in here because everyone's down on Mark Andrews. He started off slow. I made the argument earlier. I thought it was going to be a hot take, but apparently not. But I agree with Kyle. I will go with Mark Andrews. As I laid out, I'm very big on a bounce-back season for him in a big way.
All right, Rhett, you and I had the discussion earlier. I am going to feed you some good news here. I know I hated on him a little bit, but I'm going to go with Sam Laporta as the guy outside of my top 5. And it's low-hanging fruit because he's tied at 6 for me. But he did start off the year hurt last year. Now that he is fully healthy for a full season this year, if the touchdowns are still there, I'm still on the fence. I still think that Jared Goff's touchdown rate is going to come back down to earth this year. But if for some reason it doesn't, if this is the new norm for Jared Goff, or if Sam Laporta just scores at a high rate, if there's anyone in this passing offense that misses time, that's going to also be, some additional upside for Sam Laporta. He's still got upside attached to him, and we're only 2 years removed from Laporta finishing as the tight end 1 overall back in 2023. So if there's a guy outside of my top 5 that I think has the best chance, it's the low-hanging fruit at tight end 6 for me with Sam Laporta.
Yeah. Smart man. You redeemed yourself.
Thank you.
You're back
so
in
guys,
the circle.
Before we get out of here, let's talk about our friends over at Fast Draft and make sure that you download and subscribe to the Fast Draft app today using our promo code FRAMES, where you will earn a first-time deposit match of up to $50 in credits. They've got the Origins game where you can draft only rookies, their Flex 4 game where you pick your favorite players for the upcoming season, or their D-Up game, which is just like Flex 4, but with IDP football players only, tailor-made for Jorge Edwards and the Shoot the Gap crew. It's 20-second timers. It's PPR formatted. It's a 6-round best ball game, and it's perfect for anyone who is on the go but itching to get that fantasy football draft fix scratched. So once again, that's our promo code FRAMES, where you will earn a first-time deposit match up to $50 in credit. That's the Fast Draft app. Start drafting faster, ladies and gentlemen.
real quick before we get out of here, I know we're about to wrap up, but we got Big Steppa coming into the YouTube comments. There's a world where Tyler Warren scores 20 total offensive TDs. There is a world. I don't know if we're living in it, but I do. I mean, I've got Tyler Warren as my tight end 12. I was the only one that had Tyler Warren as a top 12 tight end.
I got him in the 20s.
You need to pump those numbers up a little bit, but I think 20 total offensive TDs is a little spicy unless you expect Jonathan Taylor to get hurt and they turn Tyler Warren into a full-time running back for whatever reason. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to throw 20 TDs the entire season if he's the quarterback, much less Tyler Warren scoring 20 TDs. So I don't see a world there, but I do think Tyler Warren is going to be very, very involved in the offense. And Sam Laporta technically does have better stats than Travis Kelce through the first 2 years in the NFL. It is also worth noting that, tight ends are used differently now than they were whenever Travis Kelce was drafted. And we used to have to wait at least 3 years for tight ends to draft out to break out back in the Travis Kelce days. So there's some context missing there, but Laporta has had a great start to his career. No two ways about it, but just some context there. I mean, we're talking about Travis Kelce here. So, but yeah, no, I do like Tyler Warren this year, and I'm a little lower than consensus on Sam Laporta, but nonetheless, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Big Step. But thank you for everybody who hung out with us tonight. We were talking tight ends 12 through 1 tonight. A lot of good content, whether we found out that Jonnu Smith was the greatest and he's my Kyle Pitts, or whether we found out that Drew hates Sam Laporta and Kyle still loves Travis Kelce. We gave you so much to look forward to tonight. And don't forget, at Fantasy and Frames, we are covering the entire gamut. Whether it's IDP with Shoot the Gap, whether it's Dynasty with Dynasty 365, whether you're looking for Scott Fishbowl mocks, we've got it all going on right now. But as for us, we'll be back next Wednesday, and we're going to kick off our divisional preview series with a redraft outlook of the AFC East, where we find out how much I hate Breece Hall. So
we already know, so we don't.
For myself,
I can't wait to debate that shit next week. Ooh.
For myself, for Orlando Sports, for Drew Scott at Drew 3MR, for Kyle Ziegler at KZ1180, and for Aiden Weingartner at A Weingartner 13, I'm Rhett Manuel. We are Fourth and Frames. Toodles.